In the gripping previous episode, Haejun was utterly astounded upon encountering the medical bill, harboring a grim speculation that the absconding patient may never return. The tension escalates as the director urgently briefs Yihan about the exorbitant medical expenses and the dire state of the patient. Yihan, in turn, is utterly flabbergasted at the staggering 78 billion won bill, immediately surmising that the surgery must have been nothing short of colossal. The director, with a sense of gravity, confirms Yihan's speculation, revealing that the doctor successfully rescued the patient from the very brink of death. Yihan, grappling with the gravity of the situation, questions if such occurrences are commonplace. The director, emphasizing the formidable challenges they face, elucidates the difficulty in obtaining approvals from various departments. He underscores that this predicament might not have unfolded if not for CS's proactive stance. Yihan, wearing a sardonic grin, exclaims, "So, the director implies that all of this chaos started with her." As Yihan delves into contemplation, he observes Haejun's seemingly worldly and graceful exterior. However, the dichotomy becomes apparent as she sprints through hospital halls, torn between avoiding him and a torrent of unspoken words. Muttering to himself, Yihan questions which facet of her persona truly represents the real Haejun. The director, intrigued, queries the meaning behind Yihan's musings, prompting him to dismiss it as nothing. Yihan bluntly states that the hospital is poised for an immense loss. The director, echoing the gravity of the situation, explains that despite being a non-major university hospital, they've meticulously set up everything necessary, except for Dr. Park, the head of CS, who hasn't conducted many surgeries there. The unprecedented actions of a first-year fellow have thrown them into uncharted territory. Dr. Park's contribution to the hospital's image has earned him leniency from the previous chairman, but allowing him to establish his own cadre of surgeons could be detrimental to the hospital's future. The director wrestled with the desire to divulge the heart transplant center's commitment to Yihan but hesitated, fearing Yihan's potential refusal. Instead, he chose to inform Yihan about the scolding Haejun received and a subsequent request for an apology letter to prevent a recurrence. He emphasized that while it seemed like a case of a compassionate female doctor fulfilling a sense of duty, the hospital couldn't bear the burden of all charity cases. Yihan concurred with the director's perspective but also expressed admiration for Haejun. He acknowledged her as a first-year fellow with enough influence to mobilize the entire hospital and the talent to revive someone on the brink of death. With that, Yihan rose from his chair and invited the director to join him at the 2 p.m. inaugural ceremony. In the ceremony hall, Juno teasingly remarked on Haejun's tendency to find herself entangled in significant troubles. Unfazed, Haejun countered by asking if Juno, with his apparent prowess in predicting the future, could assist her in locating 78 million won lying around. Haejun felt a surge of annoyance, questioning why the crisis had to unfold precisely on the day of the new chairman's arrival. Juno, sensing her frustration, inquired if she had spoken to Dr. Jang about the situation. Haejun, offering a small smile, confirmed that she had, but even if Dr. Jang were willing to help, the patient's disappearance rendered any assistance futile. Juno speculated that the hospital wouldn't demand the exorbitant 78 million won from her, surmising that they might settle for an apology letter. He pointed out that the chairman had yet to address the issue directly. Haejun, however, grew concerned, realizing that she had dashed away before the chairman had a chance to say anything. The director suddenly seized everyone's attention, announcing the imminent speech by the new chairman. Yihan introduced himself as Seo Yihan, the new chairman of Seomoon Jaeil Hospital. As Yihan commenced his speech, he emphasized the need for increased efficiency in their work. Haejun couldn't help but feel that his words were directed at her. Juno picked up on the tension and advised Haejun to keep her head down, avoiding eye contact with Yihan. Haejun, remaining steadfast, calmly explained that she couldn't afford to do that, as her people depended on her. She had held herself back for this long, and if she started acting up, those relying on her wouldn't know what to do. She was their source of pride, after all. Juno, recognizing Haejun's determination, smiled, acknowledging her resilience. Suddenly, Haejun, nervously but determinedly, started cheering and clapping for Yihan's speech. Yihan, utterly bewildered, observes Haejun's fervent clapping and cheering, and a profound sense of confusion envelopes him. He wonders why she's applauding like a seal, especially considering her abrupt departure without a backward glance earlier. The intensity of her current clapping seems to imply she might break her fingers in the process. Following Yihan's motivational speech, the director strides purposefully towards him, expressing profound appreciation for galvanizing the entire staff. With added emphasis, the director discloses that Yihan is scheduled for a crucial meeting with the CEO of Daehan Pharmaceuticals. Recognizing the significance of the upcoming encounter, Yihan promptly requests Haejun's resume before proceeding to the meeting. Post-meeting, the atmosphere becomes charged as Dr. Choi unleashes a torrent of yelling at Haejun for her perceived misbehavior. Outside the office, two concerned colleagues eagerly inquire if Dr. Choi's reprimand was excessively harsh. Haejun, with a reassuring smile, assures them that their concern is unnecessary, as she has devised alternative strategies to divert Dr. Choi's attention away from her. One colleague reflects on the relief that measures exist to handle such situations, even as Haejun acknowledges her plan to meet with the chairman. The colleagues earnestly request permission from HR to accompany Haejun. In the elevator, one of them shares that the police are actively searching the immigrant-heavy neighborhood for the missing patient, and they themselves are making calls to different places to aid in the tracking efforts. Haejun, apologetic for involving them in the situation, is met with heartfelt reassurance from her colleagues, who express genuine happiness in being able to assist. Another colleague approaches Haejun and shares the results of their research on the chairman. They uncover that the chairman is perceived as cold-hearted and willing to go to extreme lengths, stemming from a childhood trauma of being kidnapped. Additionally, he is an illegitimate child, reluctantly raised by the family to prevent tarnishing their name. His behavior is often fueled by rage towards his mother. Haejun interjects, urging her colleague to refrain from passing judgment solely based on rumors. The colleague promptly apologizes, and Haejun sets off alone for the chairman's office. In the chairman's office, Haejun extends a deep apology to Yihan. Puzzled, Yihan questions the reason behind her apology. Haejun specifies that it's for the foreign patient incident. However, before she can elaborate, Yihan interjects, mentioning the staggering loss of 78 million won incurred by the hospital. He inquires if there are any other costs he's not aware of. Haejun promptly denies any additional losses. Yihan acknowledges that he's already been briefed on the situation and understands that what happened was beyond her control. He advises Haejun to ensure such incidents don't recur, and Haejun visibly relaxes, expressing her gratitude for his understanding. Yihan clarifies that the decision wasn't easy for him but conveys that he'll let it slide this time. Expecting Haejun to leave, Yihan is surprised when she grins and addresses him as Mr. Seo. With a brief nod, she acknowledges his busy schedule and requests permission to speak further. Yihan grants her permission, intrigued by her forthcoming words. Haejun, maintaining her composure, reveals that she had intended to discuss this matter from their first meeting. Observing Yihan's adept handling of the financial situation, she decides to proceed and share her concerns. With a wry comment about entertaining the seal and listening to her, Yihan prompts Haejun to explain further. Haejun swiftly introduces the topic of the Heart Transplant Center, a promise made by the previous chairman to Dr. Park, the head of CS. She clarifies that Dr. Park is an exceptional person who genuinely cares for his patients and agreed to join the hospital with the condition that they establish a heart transplant center. Noticing Yihan's calm demeanor, Haejun feels a sense of relief, believing that the rumors about him must be unfounded. However, Yihan shatters her optimism by questioning the appropriateness of bringing up such a matter right after incurring a substantial loss for the hospital. Haejun attempts to explain that the heart transplant center is a separate issue and that Dr. Park, who would usually handle this, is currently on medical leave. Stressing its significance for the cardiothoracic department, Haejun faces Yihan's skepticism. Yihan, with a sarcastic tone, finds it peculiar that only a first-year fellow is representing such a crucial matter. He questions whether other doctors have a different opinion, suggesting that it sounds like an expensive endeavor that doesn't warrant further discussion. With a grin, Yihan probes Haejun about any written contract to substantiate her claims. Haejun, lacking a written agreement, prompts Yihan to advise her to ensure obtaining one in the future. Haejun, fueled by her intensity, slams the table and raises her voice, asserting the utmost seriousness of the matter. Yihan, unfazed, retorts, questioning who said he isn't serious about it. Rising from his chair, he asserts that, just like Haejun dedicates herself as a cardiothoracic surgeon, he has always given his all to lead the hospital towards progress. He emphasizes the importance of efficiency and skill in their work and acknowledges the necessity of making tough decisions. Haejun, attempting to understand his motives, questions why he forgave her so easily earlier. With a grin, Yihan corrects her, stating that he never explicitly said he forgave her. Frustration builds within Haejun as she realizes her naivety in assuming he would overlook the substantial loss she caused. Yihan elucidates that he chose to overlook the matter not out of forgiveness but because diverting her attention from work over a trivial matter like money would hinder overall progress. In her anger and frustration, Haejun finds herself at a loss for words. Despite this, she musters the courage to ask Yihan once more if he truly meant everything he said. Yihan, unfaltering, questions her lack of belief in his sincerity. Haejun, with a sarcastic smile, comments on the necessity of questioning his words. She expresses her hope that he continues to enjoy good health and that he never requires surgery from her, given her profession of examining others' hearts. As Haejun opens the door to leave, she is suddenly startled to find a boy standing in front of her. Yihan invites the boy, addressing him as Yuhan, to enter. Yuhan, noticing Haejun, comments on her appearance, describing her as pretty. Yihan sternly tells him to shut his mouth, but Yuhan, undeterred, apologizes while cheekily asking if something happened between the two. Yihan denies any such occurrence, but Yuhan persists, pointing out Yihan's loosely tied tie and inquiring if there's a reason for it. Yihan advises his younger brother to stay out of it, but Yuhan, with a mischievous grin, begins discussing their aunt in the US. Yihan interrupts him abruptly and asks how much money he needs to keep quiet. Placing some cash on the table, Yihan suggests it should be enough, and Yuhan, gleefully accepting the cash, is ordered to go home. As Yuhan leaves, he reflects that Yihan hasn't changed a bit from the old days. However, his attention is drawn to Haejun's resume lying on the table. Picking it up, he discovers the words, "Shameless Seal," scrawled across the paper. Outside the hospital, Haejun is engrossed in searching for information about Yihan on her phone when Juno approaches her. Observing her intense focus, he questions why she's looking up Yihan. Haejun, irritated, responds with a shout, questioning how could it be anything else and expressing her certainty that there must be a backstory to Yihan's demeanor. Juno, trying to lighten the mood, offers Haejun a candy, playfully teasing her about her cravings even in such situations. Haejun, frustrated, mentions that she believes she can never bring up the heart transplant center with Yihan again. Juno, genuinely concerned, tries to comfort her, but Haejun perceives his concern as a subtle mockery of her tendency to bring up serious matters in challenging situations. Juno, trying to shift her perspective, reminds her of the time she used to perform surgeries alone before Oreo joined CS. However, Haejun remains disheartened, characterizing Yihan as heartless and suggesting that if she were to open his chest, she might find a battery instead of a heart. Juno, surprised, points out that he thought Yihan didn't even yell or get angry with her. Haejun asserts that yelling would have been easier to deal with. Juno, sensing her frustration, inquires whether she's going to give up on the transplant center. Haejun, clenching her fists tightly, emphatically declares that she will never give up because she is no joke either. Yihan makes a call to his former secretary, Kang Kyuri, and begins with an apology for reaching out when Kang is no longer in the position of his secretary. Kang responds with respect, expressing his pleasure at being called by the chairman and assuring Yihan that he will always respond to his calls. Yihan inquires if Kang looked into the matter he asked for. Kang explains that he investigated and found that the promise was made verbally but not in writing. He notes that in a regular company, they would carefully consider the pros and cons and formalize the agreement with a contract, but hospitals seem to operate differently. Yihan remarks on the apparent lack of structure in hospitals, and Kang adds that, from what he gathered, they often let things slide out of affection for one another. Yihan interrupts, stating that they need to address and fix this issue, urging Kang to share the rest of the details on their way. As they head to Jaeil Hospital, Kang wonders why Yihan is still working there instead of being promoted to headquarters with him. He suggests that Yihan should talk to his father again, emphasizing that he shouldn't have to remain in an unrelated hospital. Yihan grins and cryptically mentions that it's not entirely unrelated. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted as Yihan stops in his tracks. Haejun appears in front of him, greeting him with a smile on her face. Yihan questions Haejun on her presence, stating that he thought there was nothing more to discuss between them. Haejun contradicts him, asserting that they indeed have more to talk about and have only just begun the conversation. She suggests moving to the lobby for their discussion, but Yihan grins and requests her to come into the office, indicating a preference for privacy. Meanwhile, at Yihan's home, his mother is watering plants when Yuhan startles her from behind, causing her to accidentally break a leaf. Irritated, she scolds Yuhan for surprising her, and he playfully asks if the plant is more important than her own child. The mother responds affirmatively, explaining that the plants bring her comfort these days. Yuhan teases her about her two sons, one obsessed with making money and the other with spending it. He grins and jokingly asks if he's at least better than Yihan. Yuhan massages his mother's shoulder, commenting that Yihan doesn't do things like this. The mother, with a touch of fear, states that even if Yihan offered, she would turn him down because he scares her. Yuhan playfully wonders what she would do without him. Suddenly, he asks his mother for money. Mother smacks Yuhan's hand, telling him to forget about the money and go to school. As she answers a phone call, she waves for Yuhan to leave. Despite her dismissal, Yuhan persists, attempting to convince her by boasting about his grades. Unfazed, his mother continues with her call. In a final attempt to grab her attention, Yuhan murmurs that he went to see Yihan at the hospital and found him with another girl. Hearing this, the mother abruptly puts the phone down and instructs Yuhan to come and sit with her. Yuhan, teasingly claiming to be late for school, is surprised when his mother stops him and urgently asks if he truly saw his brother with a woman who is not his business partner. Yuhan reassures her, stating that he did see a woman, and Yihan even gave her a nickname. His mother, shocked, seeks more details, and Yuhan adds fuel to the fire by mentioning that Yihan and the woman were engaged in a serious conversation. The mother, incredulous, asks if he truly saw a woman with Yihan. Yuhan playfully reminds her that his brain only reacts to really pretty women. The mother, now tense and curious, inquires about what Yihan was doing with the woman. Yuhan, grinning, offers to bring her a glass of water, and mischievously suggests bringing her purse along with it. At the hospital, Yihan informs Haejun that he has already made it clear that her request for the transplant center cannot be fulfilled. Undeterred, Haejun questions whether his stance on the transplant center is reflective of his thoughts about her personally. Yihan, being more straightforward, acknowledges that it does involve her, explaining that a project of such magnitude requires a significant amount of time and resources, and he can't commit to it without trusting the individuals involved. Haejun falls silent for a moment, contemplating the situation. Suddenly, Yihan interjects, expressing his awareness of Haejun's considerable talent and promising future, but expressing confusion as to why she is so fixated on this particular issue. Haejun, with a determined expression, asserts that she will repay the 78 million won.